3. Believe in thyself when no one else will. The third law of wealth. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Rudyard Kipling. What miracles a steadfast faith has performed! No philosophy or course of action would allow people to achieve a goal if they believe they cannot. Conversely, who or what can defeat the man or woman empowered by faith? In essence, they can't be talked down, written down, or moved off course. Poverty cannot dishearten them, and misfortune cannot deter them. Faith, it has been said, is the best substitute for friends, pedigree, influence, and capital. It has mastered more obstacles, overcome more difficulties, and enabled more millionaires than any other human quality. Faith binds the hopeful to their tasks until their deeds are accomplished. Faith is that something within which does not guess but knows. It knows because it sees what we can only envision. Faith carries in its nature a power that controls and demands, a force that inspires audacity and heroic courage. Faith is the prophet within, the divine messenger appointed to guide us through life at the very moment when we would lose heart and waver. Faith sees resources, untapped powers, unlimited possibilities, and potential that doubt and fear conceal. Faith is assured and never afraid because it sees a way out and uncovers a solution to every problem. All that endures, everything that stands the test of time, has been carved out of the bedrock of faith. There is no medicine like faith, no elixir so effective, and no tonic so powerful as the positive expectation of a brighter tomorrow. It is this dreaming, this hoping, and this promise for the future that bolsters our courage, lightens our burdens, and clears the way. The Apostle St. Paul of Ephesus, who was obliged to fold tents for his daily bread, explained the life-changing power of this spiritual force when he rhetorically asked, "Who can estimate the power of faith?" Faith provides both the power and the glory. According to thy faith be unto you. There can be no more striking example of the power of faith than Cathy Hughes. During her journey from teenage mother to corporate executive, Hughes proved that determination, hard work, and reliance on inner strength, a boundless faith, can create success. Founder of the African-American radio network Radio One, Hughes has been called the most powerful woman in radio. Since purchasing her first radio station in 1980, Hughes now owns more than 70 stations in a variety of urban markets. She is the first female owner to operate a radio station ranked #1 in any major market, and she is the first African-American female to head a publicly traded company. Her path to financial success has been a long, arduous climb that most couldn't or wouldn't endure. She dismisses her struggles, from homelessness to life as a single parent to banks that refused to loan her much-needed capital, with a quick laugh. "You survived because you were doing something that you love," she explains. "It wasn't tough on me when I was going through it." And got through it, she did. A native of Omaha, Nebraska, Hughes credits her parents and the hard-scrabble Midwestern work ethic for honing her independence and confidence. Although the family lived in a low-income apartment complex, racial pride was set in stone. During this time, Omaha was a place where you worked and performed at your best or you perished, she recalls. "My mother constantly drilled, believe in God, believe in yourself. If you fail, you let your people down." We were taught to achieve, not in spite of our race, but because of our race. Hughes descends from a long line of achievers. Her maternal grandfather, Lawrence Jones, launched Piney Woods Country Life School, an acclaimed Mississippi private academy that has served the most promising black students since 1909. Her paternal grandparents were domestics employed by a prominent family in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hughes says the family was so taken with their maid and chauffeur that they left their house to them and sent 8 of their children through college. This, in turn, enabled Hughes's father, Edgar Woods, to become the first African American to earn an accounting degree from Creighton University. Her mother, Fanny Woods, worked as a nurse when not playing trombone in an all-female swing band called the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. Hughes's love affair with radio runs deep. The oldest of 4 children, she was given a transistor radio at age 8, hiding the gift under her pillow at bedtime as she desperately tried to tap into broadcasts sent out by white-owned stations in Dallas and Nashville, Tennessee. To beat the unbeatable foe. At 14, Hughes sold classified ads for the African-American-owned Omaha Star newspaper. She later credited that experience as shaping her philosophy regarding the responsibility of black-owned media. Smart and studious, Hughes was the first African-American to attend Duchesne Academy of the Sacred Heart, a prestigious Catholic girls' school in Omaha that propelled her on a long list of firsts. Impressed with her ability and self-assurance, a priest had sponsored her admission, raised money to cover her tuition, and defended her actions when she participated in a local civil rights march. Hughes's roots of political activism were nurtured early, a toughness that she would carry throughout her life. By her own admission, a somewhat rebellious 15-year-old, Hughes traveled halfway across the country against her mother's wishes to witness firsthand the historic March on Washington. Captivated by the experience, she returned to Omaha a different person and was elected president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP Youth Council. 1 year later, her mettle was tested again when she discovered she was pregnant. Depressed and in denial, Hughes dropped out of school and married her baby's father. For the next year, she juggled motherhood, a crumbling marriage, part-time employment, and her activist aspirations. 2 years later, the couple divorced, making her another sad statistic. A single black teenage mother with an unfinished education and few prospects. Nonetheless, Hughes finished high school and, in the footsteps of her father, entered Creighton University. After her marriage ended, she continued taking classes and became involved with a financially strapped local black radio station as both a volunteer staffer and a small investor. It was her first exposure to the communications industry. Then, in 1971, she was offered a chance to join the staff of Howard University's New School of Communications, headed by veteran black journalist and broadcaster Tony Brown. After a year as a lecturer, Hughes was appointed sales manager at WHUR-FM, the campus radio station. Within a year, she became general manager, giving her, in essence, cabinet-level status despite the lack of an advanced degree. True to form, Hughes's most significant contribution as general manager had more to do with programming than with organization. She had attended a 6-week course at the University of Chicago on psychographic programming. They taught us that you organize a radio station's format to conform to the taste, preferences, desires, and lifestyles of individual listeners, she recalls. I knew that Washington, D.C. featured an impressive population of single black women who yearned for late-night soothing rhythm and blues, preferably romantic ballads and music. The result was The Quiet Storm, a program of lush slow jams by vocalists such as Nancy Wilson, Billy Eckstine, and Dionne Warwick. One song flowed into another as the format mixed female and male vocalists, old and new. In the midst of the disco craze, The Quiet Storm rejuvenated the careers of singers who had lost their radio audience. Begun as a weekend segment and hosted by student disc jockeys, the program became so popular that within weeks of its debut, it was airing nightly. The innovative format allowed Hughes to distinguish herself by increasing the revenue at the station from $250,000 to $3 million per year. It didn't take long for other stations to notice, and soon urban contemporary stations across the country copied the concept. In the wake of its popularity, Hughes urged Howard's administrators to license the now ubiquitous program. A licensing agreement, she reasoned, would have allowed the university to sell the format to other stations. However, unable to see the commercial viability, Howard officials declined. Promising herself that from that moment on she would be in control of her creativity, Hughes left Howard in 1978 to serve as vice president and general manager of WYCB-AM, a local gospel station. But frustrated by the station's lack of resources, she left after 8 months. At WYCB, the first 24-hour gospel station, I got the opportunity to build a radio station from the ground up before the owners ran out of cash. They wanted me to obtain a loan. I replied that, if I did secure a loan for them, I wanted a piece of the company. They responded that if I thought I was so smart, I should purchase my own radio station. It was as if a light went off in my head. It was a mess, but a blessing as well. That's when I decided I would never work for anyone again. Entrepreneurial plunge. By 1979, Hughes was eager to purchase and run her own station. However, with few resources, her ownership hopes had to wait. For 14 years, WOL had been the voice and sound of DC's black working class, pumping out a constant stream of soul and rhythm and blues. But when the station became the target of a government investigation, the owners, the Sonderling Broadcasting Corporation, SBC, placed the station on the market rather than lose the operation outright for allegedly violating its license. SBC was able to sell the station at 75% of its fair market value to minority investors as part of a Federal Communications Commission policy meant to encourage minority ownership of radio stations. Using a small apartment building she owned in D.C. as well as her family home in Omaha as collateral, Hughes placed her bid. She then convinced an assortment of investors, including the city's most prominent black clergy, to pump in much-needed funding. With their backing, Hughes bought WOL-AM for $950,000. At that time, radio wasn't viewed as a good investment. Banks weren't making broadcast loans. Much more daunting was the idea of a creditor lending you $1.5 million, not to mention that the individual hoping to convince you to make the loan is a black female. Looking back, I made 32 presentations and I was denied each time. Ironically, I gave my 33rd presentation to a female banker in New York. Before I could finish my pitch, we shook hands on a deal. Chemical Bank loaned me $600,000 and gave me the push I needed. Once in charge, Hughes and her husband switched the station to an all-talk format, which didn't require the high resonance quality of FM sound. But more important, the pair felt that the black community needed information much more than music. Each morning at 7 a.m. sharp, Hughes hit the airwaves offering her take on the day's events. A firebrand who strongly believed in her role as an advocate for the capital's black community, Hughes was hoping to launch one of the city's most listened-to talk shows. For the first 18 months under its new owners, WOL-AM broadcast 14 hours of talk and news each day, but not without its detractors. Advertisers and lenders weren't keen on the idea. Selling advertising was extremely difficult, and revenues lagged expenses. We conducted a format search which demonstrated that the one area that no one addressed was news and information for a black audience, Hughes remembers. I must admit that I was terribly naive. I was correct in my analysis, though I was in the dark in terms of the cost. Talk and news is the most expensive format. I had a 1,000-watt signal that had been through a payola scandal and had to overcome the stigma of the station being dead. Walk by faith and not by sight. But the road ahead would grow tougher. Forced to wear a variety of hats, the building that Hughes bought to house the station was a former drug den. She routinely met with neighborhood thugs to keep the peace and swept up used needles from the station's floor. When her 8-year marriage to Dewey Hughes collapsed, she bought out his interest after pleading with bankers to transfer the loan into her name. Still, she was swamped in debt. She lost her car before losing her home, forcing both her and her son to sleep on a cot at the station, bathing in a restroom at the end of the hall. To provide some cash flow, Hughes bit the bullet and sold a precious heirloom for $50,000, a rare white gold pocket watch made by slaves that had belonged to her great-grandmother. She contacted her creditors to update them regularly and paid them off a little at a time. When one of her investors discovered her asleep at the station at 2 a.m., he arranged for consultants to school her on budgeting and management. It wasn't long before her creditors gave an ultimatum. Talk is too costly, lenders claimed. Playing records is cheap. Change over or lose the station. Hughes compromised by slowly phasing in music. Oldies in the afternoons, go-go music at night, with only the 4-hour morning show surviving as all talk. Hughes became host by default. Nobody else would accept $5.50 an hour. She took voice training and read everything she could to stay informed. Yet for all her finishing touches, it was Hughes's candor, her raucous humor, and down-front tell-it-like-it-is demeanor, spouting scripture one minute and talking like a homegirl from Southeast D.C. the next, that traveled through the airwaves and grabbed listeners. After nearly 2 years, the tide began to turn. WOL began paying its creditors and staying afloat. Moreover, Hughes was able to return WOL to an all-talk format, and ratings rose, proving once again that Hughes knew her core audience. The station had never been a ratings powerhouse, but competitors said it made money because of its successful appeal to a targeted audience. Less than 1 year later, Hughes bought her second station, WMMJ-FM in D.C., for $7.5 million and was well on her way to pursuing her passion, cutting deals, building a media empire, and creating jobs while becoming a real force throughout the country. Strong-willed and opinionated, Hughes yearned to devote the majority of her time to the business end and entrepreneurial side of the industry, a role that she relishes. Today, her son, Alfred Liggins, who serves as president and chief executive officer, works alongside Hughes running Radio One Incorporated, the largest black-owned and operated broadcast company in the country. This media giant is the first of its type to simultaneously control several major markets and is the first female-owned radio station to rank #1 in any major market. In 1995, Radio One purchased WKYS in Washington, D.C. for $40 million, which became the largest transaction between two black-owned companies in the history of broadcasting. Hughes reached the pinnacle of success when she forged Radio One into a multimedia empire, acquiring more than 70 radio stations in 22 markets, a deal worth more than $900 million, and taking the company public, making it one of the few black-owned firms listed on NASDAQ. In 2000, Hughes made history again. She and Radio One purchased Los Angeles' KBBT-FM, The Beat, for $430 million and placed actor and comedian Steve Harvey at the helm of the morning slot. Like The Quiet Storm, nearly 30 years earlier, the decision to bring Harvey on was based on intuition. Hughes studied the LA market and determined that the universally known comedian was one of the few on-air talents capable of turning the urban radio market around. Since urban audiences offer unique challenges, in order to keep listeners loyal, stations must forge meaningful relationships with their core listeners and the target audience they serve. Harvey and Hughes made a formidable team. Their philosophy of empowering blacks in business as well as in life, stopping only to ask for guidance from above, is an outlook that works. Throughout her life, Hughes's hallmark has been her ability to embrace the calculated risk. True to form, in 2004, she would once again step out on faith and shun non-believers by partnering with the cable behemoth Comcast Corporation and introduce TV One, a cable network aimed at black viewers. There is little doubt that black entertainment television, created by media mogul Bob Johnson, dominates, almost monopolizes black television broadcasting. Consequently, some market analysts were and remain skeptical. However, Hughes believes there is room for another network targeting African Americans, and she may be right. She has proven repeatedly that her ventures can survive and thrive. To carve out space, Hughes openly states TV One's mission: to provide quality, wholesome entertainment and information for African American adults. And when asked why her network will succeed, she simply replies, "First and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur. But I've gotten bitten by the TV bug in the same way I got stung by the radio bug, and now they can't get rid of me." Today, Her cable network reaches 40 million households and is growing, dispelling any doubts about Hughes's business acumen. A huge dream requires huge faith. In the world of broadcasting, Hughes's claim to fame is what she has been able to achieve at a time when many of her black counterparts have vanished from the communications landscape. Her success has not come easily. As a black woman, Hughes has seen the cost of a radio station increase the moment she walks through the door. She has had lenders tell her to play Neil Diamond when she wanted to spin Al Green. Speaking with missionary zeal about empowering her race, she simply responds, "After 30 years of being in bed with my lenders, I've convinced them that I do not believe in programming the easy way, and I do not believe that an owner has the right to program for profit only. It's critical for us to tell our story from our perspective. When the company is black-owned, black decision-makers and black employees promote their point of view. There has to be some social value." Hughes's personal achievement is a testament of spirit, hope, hard work, and an incredible degree of faith. Her dedication to women-owned businesses, minority economic development, and entrepreneurial spirit are manifested in every aspect of her work and life. As such, she has been honored by both Black Enterprise and Fortune magazines. Moreover, her pioneering work has led Essence magazine to name her one of 100 who have changed the world. Hughes's is a story of one individual who found her passion early, learned as much as she could, persisted through the tough times, changed plans when necessary, and continued to hold on while there was little to hold on to. While her work ethic continues to drive her, Hughes wants all to understand the power that built her bridge over troubled waters. She advises all who will listen to persevere, be willing to do any job asked of them, believe in God, and work hard. Through it all, there was never a time when I lost faith. Sure, I may have doubted myself or doubted others, but I never lost faith in the spirit that lies at the center of my life. There's a lot in this world that you can't see but still can believe in, such as your hopes and dreams. Just because you can't hold it in your hands doesn't mean it's not there. Faith was the stepping stone to all that I desired, and a huge dream requires huge faith. Road to distinction is paved with years of sacrifice and faith. For those readers who search for abundance, for those who long for financial freedom, and for those who seek the keys to a 7-figure lifestyle and all the benefits this bracket holds, I suggest that you reread the example of this media mogul. Examine how she confronted her detractors. She did not lose heart when the hisses and jeers rang in her ears. Note her response when her first marriage crumbled, and she was forced to bear the combined burden of being a woman and raising a child alone. We get a hint as to what it means to make the most out of impossible conditions. When faced with similar circumstances, perhaps 99 out of 100 men and women would have ended their march toward prosperity, but not Cathy Hughes. Although her knees did buckle, she rose to the occasion. Deep within, she knew that a wavering aim and a faltering purpose were not a part of her nature. Her divine faith supplied all the capital she needed. And when fate attempted one last final blow, holding her child and sleeping on the floor of her station, a one-time drug den, without a word or a look of reproach, when others would cringe, she never flinched. She looked her creditors in the eye and refused to abjure her faith. Although she was broke and homeless, no barriers could keep her from her goal. No individual who walks the path of prosperity will tread very far until self-faith is born within, until he catches a glimpse of his higher, nobler self, until she realizes that her ambition, her aspiration, are proof of her ability to reach the dream and vision that consumes her. The Creator would not have mocked us with the yearning for infinite achievement without providing us with the ability and opportunity for its realization. What did Christ care for the jeers of the crowd? The palsied hand moved, the blind saw, the mute spoke, the leper was made whole, the dead rose in spite of the ridicule and scoffs of the spectators. There is nothing attractive in timidity, nothing lovable in fear. If I was called on to say why so many who began their upward journey with such high hopes that they would create vast sums of wealth fall short of the mark, I would say they lacked faith. There is no redeeming value in people who continually cry out against their condition and stating to an incredulous world what remarkable accomplishments they could achieve if their lots were different. Wrong. You play the hand you are dealt as you exercise your faith. Here lies the third law of wealth. He who begins with crutches will generally end with crutches. Help from within always strengthens, but help from without invariably weakens. And what do we call that help from within? Faith. If you want knowledge, you must work for it. If it is food and shelter you crave, you must toil for it. If you hope for the best that money can buy, these amenities can be attained only by the sweat of your brow. And how do you increase the level of your faith? Ask James, half-brother of the carpenter from Galilee, who wrote, "Do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead?" In a world of action, faith is power. Yes, unconquerable faith, even when circumstances are unfavorable, will carve out a way to unexpected success. How many black millionaires are there who, in their early years, made their greatest strides toward wealth and financial fulfillment and developed their greatest talents and gifts when reverses of fortune swept away every available resource? The Creator may see a rough diamond in you that only the hard hits of poverty, doubt, and rebuke can polish. Have you not been given your marching orders? As it has been written in Romans chapter 5, verse 3, "Glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not disappoint." It's true. He who wrestles with us strengthens us. Where faith exists, there is life. Where it is missing, helplessness and hopelessness will cloud the day. Comedian, radio personality, and best-selling author Steve Harvey would never enjoy his millions had it not been for the doubt and ridicule of an elementary school teacher. Tyra Banks was so stung by indifferent and biased modeling agencies that she vowed to all who would listen that her image eventually would be the benchmark by which beauty would be measured. Gospel artist Kirk Franklin and social entrepreneur John Hope Bryant never lamented or grieved over lost wealth. In a down economy, they simply triumphed over difficulties and set out to build their next fortune. Billionaire David Stewart was more than $3 million in debt before the tide turned in his favor. Countless viewers now seek his counsel and investment advice through the forum known as Shark Tank. But FUBU founder and branding icon Damon John had solidified his place within the fashion industry. How did he do it? Success was anything but easy. However, I would wager that John's wisdom would not be sought had it not been for the endless stream of rejection that he encountered from Wall Street's most financially savvy investment bankers. And on the eve of his most trying procedure, separating Siamese twins joined at the base of the brain, Ben Carson, arguably our nation's most celebrated neurosurgeon, had to avoid and sidestep the slings and arrows of colleagues within the medical community who openly questioned whether his hands were truly gifted at all. Our faith is a measure of inner belief. It provides us with a glimpse of our possibilities. The individual who professes little faith reaps little, while those who live by a mighty faith receive much. The only inferiority in us is that which we place into ourselves. The persistent thought that you are not equal to the task, that you lack the qualities required of the hour, that you are weak, inferior, or ineffective, that you lack backbone as well as grit, that success and fortune were admitted from your birthright eventually will lower your expectations and paralyze your ability. No one is defeated until he or she gives up. And the point is, don't give up. Unleash the David within. You and I might have winced watching Michelangelo conduct his daily routine. He was barely 26 years old, but his arthritis caused him to walk with a stoop and feeble shuffle. His every move was a painful ordeal. Yet Michelangelo labored for 2 years on what would be one of his most memorable pieces of art. History tells us that Michelangelo was commissioned by the Medicis, the wealthiest ruling class in Italy during the 1400s, to create a statue in the main square of Florence. This powerful family was renowned for their patronage of learning, literature, and arts, and such a request could not be denied. For more than 2 years, the famed sculptor searched for a block of stone out of which he could create the type of masterpiece worthy of such a request. Finally, on a dirt road overrun with weeds and shrubbery, he found a huge slab of marble lying on a wooden pallet. The rock had been hauled down from the Alps in nearby Tuscany years before, but had never been used. In his zeal to uncover the perfect stone, Michelangelo had walked past this rock dozens of times and never given it a thought. But that day something was different. As he moved back and forth before the stone, studying every angle, Michelangelo actually envisioned the statue of David in its entirety. Filled with inspiration, the artist immediately instructed his aides to haul the block of marble to his studio. There, he began the arduous task of hammering, chiseling, sanding, and polishing his life's work. For weeks he stayed holed up in his studio, with chisel, mallet, and drawings in hand, ever ready to obey the call of a new thought. While Florence slept, Michelangelo placed his head, his heart, his faith, and his soul into the marble block before him. On his knees every day, he prayed for fresh inspiration, new skill. He believed the Almighty would answer his prayers and direct his hand. When the day arrived for the statue's first public viewing, thousands traveled throughout the region and gathered in the main square. When his masterpiece was unveiled, those in attendance stood in awe, amazed at the sheer beauty, grace, and remarkable attention to detail. Here stood the David, so plain and yet so convincing. Michelangelo was immediately recognized as the greatest sculptor of his age. But in response, he laid no claim to genius. He said it was all a question of hard work. When asked how he managed to create such a moving piece of art, Michelangelo admitted that he saw the David complete and perfect in the marble. All he did was remove everything that was not the David. A host of parallels exist between you and the preceding story. Like Michelangelo's David, each of us resembles a masterpiece trapped in stone. But the marble that envelops us is not excavated from quarries or rock pits. Rather, it's derived from low self-esteem, lack of confidence, the shadows of doubt and fear, and our inability to exercise our faith. In order to realize our true potential, we must release all limited thinking by dreaming big dreams, establishing huge prosperity goals, while utilizing the miracle-working power of faith. Just as Michelangelo removed everything that was not the David, you and I could benefit by chiseling away those negative confining qualities that were never a part of our inalienable birthright. Cut away the timidity, the inferiority, the lack of ambition, the impossible. Trim away the lethargy, the inertia, the mundane, the indifference, the petty. Nip in the bud the despondency, the discouragement, the misery, the skepticism, the "oh, woe is me." And by all means tear away the pessimism, the cowardice, the impoverished state of mind, the hopelessness, and the lack of faith. Faith has made more millionaires than any other force, quality, or trait. The world always makes way for the individual armed with the sustaining power of faith. Consider Johnny Cochran Jr., concentrating his rapt attention first on one juror, then another, going back over the entire line again and again, analyzing every member of the jury until he burned his argument into their souls, until he hypnotized every possible candidate with his purpose, until each member of the jury saw with Cochran's eyes, thought Cochran's thoughts, and felt Cochran's emotions. He never paused until he projected his mind into theirs. There was no escape from his concentration, his persuasive rhetoric, his convincing logic, his undeniable faith in the outcome of the trial. Carry the jury at all costs, he admonished young lawyers. Move heaven and earth to carry the jury. Do all that you can the best that you can. But in the end, hold fast to your faith that both judge and jury will see your point of view. This strategy would serve the celebrated defense lawyer well when he led an astute team of legal minds through a racially contentious maze that would be labeled the trial of the century, the O.J. Simpson murder trial. When it came to his earnings and financial well-being, Cochran never deviated from the faith-filled approach that attracted his millions in the first place. "Do your homework prior to making any investment decisions," he told me over dinner. "Locate the best talent, the best money managers, the most astute financial advisors. Make sure that they buy into your fiscal thinking and monetary outlook. As I did in the legal profession, I set a goal to develop a wealth-building dream team and create a network of relationships in the financial sphere. Once my team reviews any and all deals, I just move out on faith." An overnight success that was 20 years in the making, Terry McMillan might just be as far as you can get from the traditional image of a tweedy novelist. Free-spirited, outspoken, and sassy, she wears stylish clothes, lives in a plush Southwestern-style house near Oakland, California, and points out that the amounts of money earned or owed to her with the ease of an agent, book advances, paperback rights, foreign publishing contracts, movie options, book clubs, and impending presentations. Her walk-in closets feature rows of designer attire and accessories. The trendy earrings she collects have become her signature, alongside her white sunroofed BMW that bears Arizona plates, a vestige of her last teaching assignment in Tucson. McMillan, who still holds a tenured post at the University of Arizona, will certainly never be forced to teach again. But reaching financial independence has been anything but easy. Although the top magazines and New York editors routinely returned her manuscripts, suggesting that she stick to her day job as a word processor, it is said that the acclaimed writer turned over entire libraries hoping to ensure that every word, phrase, sentence, and paragraph fits seamlessly, like hand into glove, before she thought her novels worthy of publication. The oldest of 5 children, McMillan was born in Port Huron, Michigan, a predominantly white working-class community. Her father, who suffered from tuberculosis and was confined to a sanitarium during most of McMillan's childhood, battled the lingering effects of alcoholism as well. While McMillan was in middle school, her father left the family, which forced her mother to take on a variety of minimum-wage jobs, including as a domestic and an assembly line worker. McMillan credits her mother, widowed when she was 16, with teaching me and my 5 siblings the value of faith, taking risks, and resiliency. To assist with family finances, McMillan found a job shelving books at a local library. There, her imagination roamed. Always an avid reader, she became totally absorbed in the classics, particularly Hawthorne, Louisa May Alcott, Henry David Thoreau, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. After studying these prolific writers, McMillan falsely believed the literary world was reserved for wealthy whites only. But this perception would soon change. With only $300 to her name, she moved to Los Angeles, working as a secretary by day and taking classes in African American literature at a local college at night. In this setting, McMillan was introduced to the works of black writers such as Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, Jean Toomer, and Ann Petrie, whose novel, The Street, replete with its frank, provocative, and open depiction of black urban love and life, would greatly influence McMillan's writing style. By the time she left Los Angeles for New York City to attend graduate school at Columbia, McMillan had a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of California at Berkeley and a love affair with writing. 26 credits shy of her master's degree, she left Columbia and joined the Harlem Writers Guild, where, while working as a word processor and raising an infant son alone, she wrote and published her first novel, Mama. The novel was based on just one of several short stories that McMillan had tried with limited success to get into print. When the Harlem Writers Guild accepted her into its program and told her that Mama should really be a novel, not a short story, McMillan expanded the manuscript to nearly 400 pages. Highly autobiographical in tone, the book explores the grim and humorous realities of an urban African-American family. On a whim, she sent her work to Houghton Mifflin, a first-tier New York publisher, hoping that she would at least receive free editorial advice. She was pleasantly surprised 4 days later when an editor called and mentioned that she loved her story and hoped to publish her book. Macmillan knew the power of publicity and was determined not to allow her debut novel to go unnoticed. When the publisher told her that it could not afford a full-blown media blitz, she decided to promote the book on her own. Using the facilities at the law firm where she then worked as a typist, Macmillan wrote more than 3,000 letters to prospective readers and bookstores who found her approach hard to resist. By the end of the summer 1987, she had attracted several offers for readings and presentations. Next, she coordinated and personally financed an exhaustive media tour, a cross-country odyssey that included nightclubs, hair salons, and churches, proving that she was more than willing to peddle her book out of the trunk of her car to anyone who would stop and listen. Her faith and relentless determination touched a chord with readers, and her success story has become one of the most remarkable in the publishing industry. The novel received positive reviews, and her ceaseless letter-writing campaign and reading tours created a template of how to sell to African-American readers. 6 weeks after Mama was published, the book rushed into its third printing. Although her first two works enjoyed a welcomed level of success, her third book, Waiting to Exhale, which spent 3 months on the New York Times bestseller list and swept the nation's bedrooms, beaches, college campuses, reading rooms, and rush-hour subway trains, selling more than 700,000 hard copies in the process and nearly 4 million more in paperback, made her a millionaire. Not since Alice Walker's The Color Purple had there been so much discussion about the state of relations between African-American men and women. The fact that a black female author was profiling vivid characters with whom many black women could identify had the added effect of proving to booksellers that there is a sizable, previously ignored market for black fiction, just as the $67 million for the film version proved there is a sizable market for black movies. Regardless of the size of your dream or the state of your resources, nothing lies beyond the reach of faith. This divine force looks past obstacles that would discourage most. This spiritual connection backs all achievement, sees triumph beyond temporary defeat, and carries the day. Faith is the locksmith that opens all doors, that no obstacle can bar, no difficulty or disaster can dishearten, where no misfortune can swerve from its intended purpose. Faith is a friend and willing ally to the down and out, the have-nots, those who complain that the door to financial success is locked and gated. If they only knew that each of us receives in life what we concentrate on with all our might. There's no need to wait for luck, for outside assistance, for capital, for a boost, or for anything or anyone other than ourselves. Here lies your helping hand. Although our level of financial attainment, whether we are rich or poor, wealthy or penniless, may rest in our hands, any enduring change begins with our own ability to exercise our own faith. After speaking before 1,000 followers at a Washington, D.C. gathering, Macmillan was cornered by an aspiring writer seeking to gain inside advice. The young admirer proudly showed that she had recently spent 6 days on a poem she hoped to publish. Unimpressed, this esteemed author lit a flame under the would-be hopeful and urged her to polish her craft. "Oh, really?" was Macmillan's response. "I never spent less than 6 months on any material that I hoped would make it to a publisher's desk. Nothing is denied to anyone who is willing to pay the price. Though some of my readers may view me as a rock star, I can recall the days in which I was a struggling writer who was trying to find an audience for my voice. Whatever position I have attained is due to my faith. God gives us what we need when we really need it." A zest for life. Self-made millionaires approach every activity with inner belief and fervor. Their friends and associates often speak of their incredible energy and zest for life. If these qualities don't describe you, I suggest that you begin to develop the habit of embracing each day as an exciting new adventure. At the conclusion of a Sunday service, a member of the Dallas, Texas-based Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church approached the celebrated pastor, Tony Evans, with the following question: "Dr. Evans, what would you do if you knew you would die tomorrow?" "Just what I do every day of my life," he responded calmly. I would end my day with prayer only to wake up in glory. As the senior pastor and one of the most respected leaders in evangelical circles, Evans has not only taken his congregation from 10 believers who met weekly in his home to more than 8,000 members, but he has also revolutionized the traditionally conservative role of Christianity in the community. Without this sublime faith, a fierce commitment to his mission, how could this once unknown preacher build such a ministry? Here's a clue. With regard to the pastor's divine self-confidence, Henry Van Dyke, the 19th century educator and writer, provides the answer. Where you find a flower, you know there must have been a seed. Where you find a river, there must have been a spring. Where you find a flame, there must have been a fire. And when you find a man beloved and blessed of God, you know there must be faith. Whether it was Abraham going out, not knowing whither, or Moses contending with Pharaoh, or Paul proclaiming the Gospels, or Dr. Evans saving the least, the last, and the lost in the end, men and women of faith win. When asked to explain how he achieved his mission, the pastor replied, the secret and source of all wealth, success, and heroic achievement has been and will forever be faith. Sweet taste of success. A careful look at the sources of history's greatest fortunes not only exposes the futility of trying to speculate your way to billions, but also refutes a common misconception regarding the connection between original ideas and great wealth. It is true that new ideas have given birth to many immense fortunes, but the original thinkers have not generally been the ones who made the fortunes. A more dependable strategy is to learn how to make money from ideas and then be prepared to capitalize on an original notion dreamed up by someone who was more skilled at that sort of thing. If this sounds like a jaded notion, consider the story of Michelle Hoskins. During the winter of 1983, Michelle Hoskins knew she had hit rock bottom. A mother of 3, she was jobless and had just survived a bitter divorce. When I leave, her ex-husband boasted defiantly, you won't be anything. Try as she might to prove him wrong, she ended up on welfare. It was humiliating, she recalls, but those 18 months on government assistance motivated me to strive for a better life. Thanks to a dogged work ethic, years of sacrifice, an undeniable faith, and an old family recipe for breakfast syrup that was first created by her great-great-grandmother, a slave in Mississippi, Hoskins has made her fortune. The Chicago native now supplies Michelle's honey cream syrup, a sinful confection of cream, honey, and churned butter, as well as a line of gourmet pancake mixes to 10,000 stores across the country, including Kroger, Safeway, Winn-Dixie, and Walmart. What Hoskins, president and CEO of Michelle Foods Incorporated, markets isn't just any pancake syrup or butter. This recipe and secret blend is part of an astonishing story, a set of instructions and combination of ingredients that was passed down through the generations. The original syrup was comprised of churned butter, cream, and honey. America Washington, her great-great-grandmother and a slave who created the recipe for her owner, had stipulated that the recipe could be passed only from mother to daughter, and not any daughter, the third daughter of each generation, a stipulation that puzzles Hoskins to this date. Her mother won the prize recipe, but she had only one daughter, Michelle, who managed to persuade her mother to share the recipe. Moreover, she stated that she wanted to pass the recipe on to Michelle's third daughter, Keisha. Thankfully, after 8 years of prodding, her mother relented. This beloved family recipe would become Hoskins's saving grace. In 1982, Hoskins took inventory. With little financial security and 3 small children, her dreams were the only assets she possessed. But her life was about to change. After preparing breakfast one morning for a few close friends, her guests raved over her pancakes and syrup. A heart-to-heart talk with her family led her to believe that a recipe for success might literally be at her doorstep. 2 years later, she went for broke. She resigned from a part-time teaching job and sold her condo, car, furniture, and jewelry to raise $150,000 to launch her business. She and her children moved in with her parents, where Hoskins and her youngest daughter made batches of syrup on an old stove in the basement and bottled the product. My family thought I had lost my mind, Hoskins remembers. Each night my girls and I would painstakingly fill bottles of syrup by hand. It took nearly 1 hour to fill 12 bottles as our feet stuck to the floor, but deep down inside, I knew it was going to work. She took the recipe to a chemist who formulated the ingredients into a marketable product suitable for mass distribution. Next, she figured out the nuts and bolts of the business, including finance, accounting, and other crucial aspects of running a company. Finally, she attempted to break or circumvent racial and gender barriers to get her product on the market. Little of it was easy. Within a year, however, she had contracts with 2 major chains in the Chicago area. 3 years later, her syrup was featured in 300 stores. But Hoskins was hoping to branch out nationally. To make the transition easier, she developed 2 new flavors, butter pecan and maple cream, and was making gains marketing her syrups in St. Louis, Detroit, and the Midwest. But I was still struggling, she shared with me. Sometimes I was forced to barter syrup in order to pay the rent. The frustrating part was failing to comprehend the ins and outs of the food manufacturing industry in addition to being a black woman who, far too often, was not taken seriously. In 1991, I caught wind of a racial discrimination lawsuit that was about to impact the Denny's restaurant chain. Needless to say, I immediately saw an opportunity. I realized that Denny's and its competitors were seeking to address their diversity needs. Without any contacts or letters of introduction, I personally called Denny's headquarters every Monday morning at 10:30 for 2 years in an effort to convince the chain to carry my product. My faith and persistence paid off. In 1993, Denny's awarded Michelle's Foods a $3 million contract. Nearly all the millionaires surveyed for this study indicated that a major component to their financial success and their ability to overcome fear and low self-esteem is a direct function of faith. Those men and women who are destined for success believe that, sooner or later, they are going to be successful. They believe that whatever occurs, either positive or negative, is part of a grand plan that will lead to their financial windfall. They refuse to entertain, dwell on, or discuss the likelihood of failure. The concept of failure never occurs to them, or, as Michelle Hoskins revealed, my fortune has its roots in the belief that a good idea can't be stopped, and in the single dollar that got me started. The men and women in this study know how to defeat fear and worry, primarily by unleashing their inner self-confidence and a firm belief within their own abilities. Here are the values that Michelle Hoskins used repeatedly as she made the leap from fear, worry, and despondency to the life of which, at one time, she could only dream. Giving back. Of those to whom much is given, much is required. If you possess love, hope, or graciousness in abundance, offer your gift to those who need it. When you serve others, that form of service returns to you in the form of compassion and gratitude. And as you reach out to others, you'll realize that your struggle, your challenge is neither enormous nor insurmountable. One of the primary reasons that such a small percentage of African American households have attained millionaire status is because so few seek to own and operate their own businesses. Hoskins took advantage of programs that encouraged and supported minority and female-owned companies, rode the wave of expansion of these types of businesses in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and gradually built a network of colleagues who assisted and supported her. Hoskins launched a nationwide mentoring program, from recipe to retail, to aid, uplift, and support entrepreneurial hopefuls who desperately seeked to follow in her footsteps. Let the Spirit move you. To honor her ancestors' gift, the Chicago native introduced the marketplace to a life sweetened with success and triumph and leavened with challenge and toil. Through it all, She carries a great deal of respect for the gift that was graciously passed down to her. It's ironic and humbling, she explained, that this legacy begun by a slave, my ancestor, would eventually pave my road to financial independence. I felt as if my great-great-grandmother was calling out to me. It's as if she reached out from the past and said, I have been waiting for someone to accept the challenge and step out on faith. I thank God each day that I heard the call. Leaving a legacy. Huskin's parents told her, anything that the mind can conceive can be achieved. When Huskins endured an emotionally draining divorce, not to mention working one part-time job after another, she read an article highlighting women business owners who managed to reach their goals and thereby control their own destiny. It forced her to think, why not form a company and sell my great-great-grandmother's syrup? In true entrepreneurial form, Huskins began to visualize her enterprise replete with bottles, labels, and packaging, as well as the stores that would carry her product. She decided then and there to join the mix of these high achievers and leave a legacy for her 3 daughters. Faith. One of the greatest fears that each of us face, Huskins points out, is the fear of failure. Whether I was mixing product or presenting before a distributor, the fear of failure always seemed to fester, the nagging insecurity that I wouldn't succeed or that I was not good enough. Fear is an emotion that wealth requires you to conquer. The longer it lives within you, the stronger it lives within you. Thankfully, my foundation centers on the man above. Crisis prayer is okay, but daily prayer is better. In his eyes, I am always good enough.